After 4 weeks, 3 weeks of summer break, Formula One is finally back in Zandvoort from Friday to Sunday, from the 21st of August to 23rd of August. As not only that, it's the final race in Zandvoort before the end of Zandvoort as a track in Formula One. For now, especially, it is a sprint weekend, which makes it very, very interesting for all the teams and all the drivers on the grid. Sounds easy. Until you are dealing with blogs, pages, events, and about 10 different tabs open at the same time. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Udo. Udo lets you build your website, manage blogs, create events, and basically run everything in one place instead of switching between 5 different platforms. Honestly, it makes the whole process way smoother. If you are thinking about building your own website, blog, or project, check out Udo using the link in the description below. If you want to start building your own website or brand online, you can check out Udo in the description below and get started for yourself. Don't forget, guys, to like, share, and subscribe for the new episode of the F1 show. Let's get started. So, yeah, Formula One is finally back after a couple of weeks of summer break. And to be honest with you, I'm really happy that it's back because this is quite no Formula One for a couple of weeks is quite boring. And I mean we had that kind of experience obviously after Japan from Japan from post Japan to pre Miami. Well, obviously there was a month break and there was no races because obviously the races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia were cancelled. So yeah, Formula was back in Zandvoort. It's the home race of Max Verstappen as well. So he'll be very, very motivated to do really, really well in Zandvoort. But yeah, let's discuss all the teams, chances. Let's start with Mercedes. I mean, Mercedes, they are obviously they have a very good lead in the drivers' championship. They have a very good lead in the constructors' championship. Um, they've had a great car, a very good car this season. A great team, but not great in terms of reliability. And I think one of the reasons why maybe you could say Lewis Hamilton's still in the title fight, even though it's 50 points, I still think it's a long way to go. Is because of the reliability issues that Mercedes have had. I mean, if you look at the races that Mercedes lost, for example, forget Hungary because they deserve to lose. But if you look at Barcelona, I mean, some of it also was down to because they got bamboozled by the strategy of Ferrari, and Ferrari beat them in terms of strategy. But some of it was because they got unlucky with the virtual safety car, where Lewis Hamilton pitted and he went out of the pits and he was ahead of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Silverstone was a similar case also, where Kimi Antonelli was gonna look like he was look like gonna win the race, and he was catching Leclerc, and he was gonna pass him and gonna win the race. But he had problems in his car, which put him out of the points. So I mean, Mercedes have been the best team, but they've not been great in reliability. Um, but despite that, I still think they are the heavy favorite to win the constructors. I mean, they have a decent, good gap of a Ferrari for the constructors championship. This is a long way to go, but I don't see Mercedes throwing away that kind of gap to Ferrari, because Ferrari sometimes, let's be honest, Ferrari sometimes are inconsistent. And driver championship. I mean, Antonelli, I do expect him to win the title. He's the favorite, but you can never count out Lewis Hamilton, and never count out George Russell. So it's a long way to go. I mean, a lot of people thought after Zandvoort that Piastri was going to win the title, but that didn't happen, of course. So yeah, but this is a very important. This is a very important weekend, especially for George Russell. For Kimi Antonelli, I mean, He's had a very a fantastic season, a very good level of performance, um, level of pole to win conversion rate except Silverstone. He's had a fantastic season so far. Even in races where Mercedes maybe are not at the best. For example, in Hungary, he got a podium and extended the lead in the driver championship over Hamilton and Russell. And that's what wins your championships. That even though when you might not win, at least you look like a winner to some extent because you extended your lead in the driver championship over your competitors. So so yeah, but Antonelli, I mean, he would he's had like last year. If you look at some of the tracks, like for example Belgium, Austria, no Belgium, Monaco, tracks where maybe he didn't have a good memory last year, but he had great memories this year. And I think he would like to do the same. Zandvoort last year he had he had a very bad memory because obviously he crashed into the back of Leclerc and he got a penalty. But this year he will be hoping to avoid that and try to win the race. So because I think if he wins this race, obviously, he will extend the lead in drivers' championship over Hamilton and Russell, and it will almost make him. I think if he wins this race, it will almost make him guaranteed to win the driver championship. In my opinion, although he might get an engine penalty, according to Toto Wolff, he will most likely get an engine penalty at Monza. And the reason Toto Wolff, the reason that Toto Wolff, the reason that Mercedes are sorry are putting that engine penalty in Monza for is because Toto Wolff said that to avoid pressure on Kimi, putting him less pressure on Kimi for Monza because obviously there will be a lot of Italian fans in Monza, a lot of crazy fans who will be supporting Ferrari and will be supporting Kimi Antonelli. Um, and yeah, to put them as much as low pressure as they can. So yeah, and it's a track where you know it's not it's not a track where you can 100% overtake, but you can overtake, especially in that at the end of the turn one chicane. So so yeah, and also the corner where I think where Piastri made that overtake on Lando 2 years ago. So yeah, but yeah, for Zandvoort, I do expect the community to look very, very strong. George Russell, this is a very important weekend for him. I mean, he's had 3, 4 weeks off. It's important for him to, he must have, had obviously a good break away from Formula One, but he must have, to some extent, also learned from the mistakes he's done and tried to rectify that and try to correct it and do not do it again for the rest of the 2026 season and do much better in the second half season than he has done in the first half of the season. First half of the season. So yeah, but obviously, some of the bad moments happened to George. Some of it is obviously down to his driving, but also some of it is down to the car issues, like for example the anti-stolen in Hungary. So yeah, but yeah, this is a very very important weekend for him. He to bounce back and to get back to winning ways. Otherwise, he's going to keep, being further and further behind Kimi Antonelli. For Mercedes as a team, I think that I think they're the favorites to win. I think McLaren and Red Bull will not be far away to challenge them, in my opinion. But I think Mercedes are the favorites to win. So yeah, I think if you're a Mercedes fan, you can be very confident about Mercedes' chances of winning the race this weekend, or any race this weekend, because Mercedes obviously they've been the fastest car all season. So, and I think they will be also for the remainder of the season, the remainder of the season. Sorry. For Ferrari, I think it's a track that might struggle, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at their record in Zandvoort in recent years, is it's not that great. They had a double DNF last year, of course. Well, obviously crashes from Hamilton and from Leclerc's side. So I don't think it's going to be a good weekend for Ferrari. I think it's a track they usually struggle. It's a track they have had a poor record in the past. Lewis Hamilton, also the track of Zandvoort isn't the record of in Zandvoort for Lewis Hamilton isn't that great as well. So he doesn't have a strong record in Zandvoort. Leclerc, he can do well. He picked up a couple of podiums, so he can get a podium at least in this weekend. So yeah, but I think Ferrari will struggle, and to be honest with you, it's very difficult to put trust on Ferrari to do work consistently because one week they're up, one week they're down. I mean, they won in Barcelona, they beat Mercedes in terms of the strategy, and then next week in Austria they were in terms of pace they were terrible, and they finished something like fifth and eighth if I'm not mistaken, or fourth and eighth. Silverstone, then they come to Silverstone and they get a 1-3. Leclerc winning, and then and then Hungary they finish fourth and fifth. So in a track where you could say they arguably should have got pole, and they were the favorites to get pole and win because Mercedes was struggling. And if anybody you would trust, if there was anybody you would trust to capitalize on Mercedes, let's say um, issues, it would be Ferrari. But it wasn't them. It was McLaren and Lando. So so yeah, I think Ferrari will struggle this weekend, in my opinion. You look at Red Bull. Obviously, this is the home race of Max Verstappen. He will be very motivated, especially it's the his final race in Zandvoort. Final race in Zandvoort. He'll be very motivated to put one last good show for his fans, especially in his home race in Zandvoort. And even Red Bull put a helmet, sorry, a new livery for the design obviously for both Red Bull drivers, Hadjar and Max Verstappen for Zandvoort. Very good delivery, a very good livery. So yeah, but Red Bull, I mean they've had a couple of good results. I have to say, in the last five races, they started to get better to some extent, even though some of the mistakes are still there in terms of Max Verstappen's car, where they've had a couple of issues in the car, re-wing failures, and so on. But he got a podium in Austria. He arguably could have won in Austria as well. He closed the gap to Russell at the end. He arguably should have got a podium in Silverstone if it wasn't for that crash at the end. Also finished in the podium in Belgium. Finished second in Hungary. Um, Finished the podium in Canada as well. So he finished second in Monaco as well in qualifying. Obviously, before he had Andy Stoll in the race. So when the car was working on Max Verstappen's side and there was no issues, he's been able to get good good results and deliver good performances, good qualifying laps, and good race pace. Um, so when the car doesn't let him down, so yeah. But do I think he will challenge for the wins this weekend? It's difficult to say because it's a sprint weekend as well. Let's not forget. I mean, it's the first time that there will be a sprint weekend in Zandvoort. But it's very so. I think Mercedes obviously they're still the benchmark, but I think Max will for sure. I think Max Verstappen will be a big contender for the podium. For the win, it's difficult to say. I think the as the weekend goes on, I think time will tell whether they can challenge for the win or not. So yeah, because like I said, let's not forget this is a sprint weekend. So yeah, for McLaren, also, quick shout out to Udo for sponsoring today's episode. I was literally updating the site earlier, and the blog event setup is ridiculously easy to use. Links below if you want to check it out. Anyway, back to the show. They obviously had a very, very good win in McLaren. I'm talking about. They had a very, very good win in Hungary. Arguably should have had a 1-2 if it wasn't for the whole situation of Piastri with the science. Lando had a brilliant, phenomenal performance in terms of race pace. Did a great lap to get pole, and then in the race he was fantastic. won the race comfortably at the end, 15 seconds to Max Verstappen. And the McLaren race pace in Hungary was fantastic. The upgrades to some extent played a part in McLaren's progress in Hungary, but also driving performance of Lando and the car, how the operating setup on the car, how McLaren worked on it in Hungary, generally really worked. So yeah, but for Zandvoort, I think it's a track they can be very strong as well. I mean they won the last two times, but even though those two times they were the fastest team, the fastest car, and the fastest car. But Zandvoort 2023, Lando had a good performance to finish second in qualifying. So yeah, I think Lando will be very strong in Zandvoort. I think McLaren will be quite strong as quite competitive, I should say. Will they be offers? I don't think they're going to be. I don't think they're the favorites to win this weekend for sure. But I think if you ask me which team could be, let's say, the biggest competitors to Mercedes this weekend, I would say McLaren, in my opinion. So yeah, I think McLaren will be the biggest competitors to Mercedes for this weekend, in my opinion. Red Bull, they can, but I think McLaren, I think in race pace they're better than Red Bull, even though Red Bull in Zandvoort with Max Verstappen they'll be very motivated. So so yeah, Lando will be very strong. He's a very he did really well in Zandvoort 2024. Obviously he had a bad memory in Zandvoort last year. Um, but he will be hoping to get revenge on that aspect. Oscar Piastri did really well in Zandvoort last year. He won the race, especially after what happened to him in Hungary. He'll be very motivated to bounce back and put another good performance like he did in Hungary. So so yeah. And then you look at the best of the rest. You look at, I mean, Vika, they've been in a very good run of form. They've collected a lot of good points, very good points from Lindblad and Lawson's side. However, despite this, obviously there's the rumors that Lawson might get kicked out and Tosolov to replace him. The youngster, new upcoming star, is driving in F2, a new upcoming star who could join Formula One, and he could replace Lawson for that Racing Bulls seat. Which again, I really don't get. I don't get it because Lawson has been absolutely fantastic for Racing Bulls this season, but it is what it is. Um, but yeah, VCAP have been very strong this weekend, especially last 5 6 race weekends. And it's a track I think they'll be very strong also in Zandvoort. This is the same track they got the podium last year with Isaac Hajar getting a podium at the end to finish P3. So I think they'll be very competitive also this weekend, and I think they will. I think they have a very good chance to again to be the best of the rest and to get very good points once again. So yeah, and then you look at Alpine. They've not been in a good run of form, I would say, after Monaco. Now they've had a couple of weeks of break. For them to recharge themselves. Then that could give them a good chance to bounce back and get back to getting good points get once again, and maybe challenge for the podium as they did in Monaco. And Gasly I think Gasly got a podium before Van Zandvoort in 2023, so maybe he can do well also in this weekend. Audi that have had a couple of good performances and good results recently, so they'll be hoping to keep that momentum up with upcoming races. Cadillac they're gonna struggle, especially they changed the team principal and brought in another one. So yeah, but I think they will struggle this weekend. Haas, I mean, they've been a very bad run of form. I would say after China, very bad run of form. Um, but they've had like I said, weeks of break. This could give them a good chance to get back to bounce back and get back to getting solid points in Zandvoort like they did in the first two races this year. So yeah, Williams. I mean, I don't expect something special from them this weekend. Cadillac, I don't expect something special from them as well. Aston Martin, they improved to some extent with the upgrades they brought in Hungary. However, this weekend they're going to bring another upgrade, which is an engine upgrade. So let's see if that engine upgrade will help them to get better once again or not. But Fernando Alonso, I mean, if there's rumors that his contract and his stance on staying for Aston Martin next year could depend on that engine upgrade this weekend in Zandvoort. So it could be a very very important weekend for Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso. So yeah, my predictions. I'm going. Let's start with sprint pole. Sprint pole. I'm going for. I'm going for George Russell. I think he will get pole position. Sprint, top three sprint. I think George Russell will win the sprint. Second place, I'm going for Lando, and third place, I'm going for Kimi Antonelli. And then you look into the qualifying, the real qualifying, not the baby qualifying, which is the sprint qualifying. Real qualifying, a pole position. I'm going for Kimi Antonelli also. And then top three for the race. Third place, I'm going for Max Verstappen. In second place, I'm going for Lando Norris. And in first place, I'm going for, I think Antonelli will win the race. So that's my predictions for the whole weekend qualifying, um, sprint qualifying, and the race itself. What is my the biggest who's the biggest flop, biggest surprise, and one crazy prediction? Biggest surprise, I'm going for. Uh, I would say Lindblad. I think Lindblad will do. I know he's been very, very good this season, so maybe it's not a surprise. But I think he would do well this weekend. I think maybe I might have a feeling maybe he could maybe finish, let's say, in the top five. Let's say top five or top six. So I think he will get points in the sprint and qualify sprint in the race, and I think he will finish something like top five, top six in the race. So I think he will do well this weekend in Zandvoort. So I'm going for biggest surprise, Arvid Lindblad. Biggest flop, Ferrari. Yeah, let's go with them. Ferrari, biggest flop in Zandvoort. As I said before, I think this is a track they have a very bad record in the past. Lewis Hamilton is not a track that is very suitable to his driving style. So I think they will struggle this weekend in Zandvoort. So yeah, one crazy prediction. That uh, s- that one a driver from one of the best of the rest teams, and not in the top four teams, which is Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren. A driver from one of the best of the rest teams finishes in the top five in the sprint and in the race. So I expect that to happen in the both races, not just as in the race, also in the sprint. So a driver from one of the best of the rest teams finishes in the top five or top six in the sprint and in the qualifying. Sorry, in sprint and in the race. I'm confusing myself. Bloody hell. So that's my one crazy prediction. So yeah, and that's it, guys. Thank you, guys. I wish you guys have a very very nice day. See you next time, and goodbye.